has the internet, in your opinion, changed Chinese society?
Well, that's the thing that's amazing. You know, if we think that the internet has changed our lives in America, it's even that much more transformative for an average Chinese citizen. If you think about it, somebody who's living in the countryside before, they didn't have the transportation, the technology to feel connected to other people. All of a sudden now you go online, you've got half of the population online today. That means we're still only halfway to the end of this story. It's gone up 60% in the last 4 years. So people now, it's changed the way that they think about themselves politically, economically, socially, as basic as how do you get married, how do you meet the people you want to spend the rest of your life with.
And yet they can't see the whole internet. They can't see Facebook. They can't see Twitter. Is censorship something that you think is ever going to end in our lifetime?
You know, this is the goal of this book, and one of the important points about this project was to put these two things face to face and say, look, China is growing enormously fast, the internet's growing enormously fast, but censorship is a fundamental fact of the political system today. They believe, the Chinese Communist Party believes, that they need to limit information if they're going to count on political survival. So I think what we can expect is that they may mess around with the edges. They may allow certain topics, like pollution, for instance, to become more a subject you can discuss more freely. But fundamentally, the political system is based on the idea that information needs to be controlled. And so I don't expect that they're going to relinquish that.
Do you think the internet can challenge the Communist Party in the longer term? Can the internet bring democracy to China?
You know, I think it's probably too much to imagine that it's going to be a fundamental countervailing force against the political parties in China, political party singular. The truth is, though, it has already exerted enormous pressure on the government. It's forced them to respond in a way to public pressure that they didn't have to before. They go online every day and they use the internet, in effect, as a kind of intake facility to understand what people are saying, what they care about, the issues that are on people's minds. So I think in the end, the Communist Party realizes that the internet, from their perspective, is a threat. They see it as a threat. And for that reason, they're going to keep it under very close watch. It's going to be a very hard road, I think.
What about Facebook and Twitter? You're actually visiting those companies while you're here. You're advising those companies. Do you think those companies will ever get unblocked in China? I mean, and if not, what path do they have?
I mean, I don't think they need advice from me, but one thing that they do know, and they're both being very smart about the way they're going about it, I think, is they recognize that the future for Facebook and Twitter is a long game. It's not a short game. They've both been over there a lot. They've seen in the short term that I think there is potential for them to get more Chinese businesses advertising on their services in the United States. That might be the beginning of a long-term relationship. But at the moment, the Chinese government does not see any political incentive to change their ban on those two.
And at the same time, their Chinese counterparts, Weibo, WeChat, you know, Tencent, they're getting bigger and bigger. You know, are they true equivalents of what we have in the United States?
They're not. I mean, as you know, you've been there, you've seen them. They are in some ways a composite of different products. So Weibo, for instance, which is often described as the Chinese Twitter, does have elements of Facebook in its product. And it's been successful. And this is the thing. In a way, you know, oftentimes from far away, we misjudge how idiosyncratic Chinese tastes are. There is something about Weibo, about Weixin now, which has been really enormously successful. They are very Chinese products. They're also responsive to the Chinese government. And so as a foreign, I think as a foreign internet company, there's going to be this constant challenge, which is, from the Chinese government's perspective, it's better to boost and allow a domestic competitor rather than to allow a foreigner in.
Do Chinese people care? Do young people care? I mean, one of the things I learned was that many students didn't care at all about politics.
Yeah.
Do they care about censorship?
They do, is one of the interesting things. I think, as you've seen, there's been this evolution over the last few years. People who have grown up in an environment in which they're able to go online and complain about, for instance, the fact that they can't get a job, or they can complain about local political issues. They find it hard to then realize, well, wait a second, what do you mean I can't complain about the central government? And so they've, in a sense, they've sort of acquired the experience of skepticism. And it's pleasant. They love it. And in a way, you have to, if you're a young Chinese person today, you have to distinguish yourself by the force of your opinions. That's one of the ways that you get a job. It's one of the ways you get ahead. And yet it also means that it puts them into contradiction with the state. So I think it's at a very interesting moment where the young generation in China is raised with a different set of values than their parents.
Do you think any of these Chinese companies, like Alibaba, which is about to go public in the United States, can it be a truly global company?
You know, it has global aspirations. One of the things that I'm most interested in these days in China is the way that people see their own parameters as companies, as a country, as individuals. Alibaba has every intention of being a global competitor, but I think one of the things we've learned is just the way that there are products that work in the United States and don't necessarily translate to China. It's going to take some work to get the Alibaba product to work in the United States.
You speak to so many different people in this book, Chinese dissidents. Is this going to be published in China?
It'll be published in Taiwan. It'll be made available to anybody who wants it in China, and I hope they read it.